Hello. Hi, everybody. We are live. Hopefully this is working. Sorry about that. I got a little thing that popped up. Hi, first time show stuff. I am sorry about that. We are going to be live with Brian Buckmire, our host for the Daily, not Law&Crime Network's Daily. I'm going to go ahead and bring Brian on, and he's going to start answering your questions. Be sure to post your questions. The mods will guide you on how to post your questions in the chat, and I will filter the questions to Brian. So here comes Brian. This will be better next time. Sorry, Brian.
It was a great introduction, Addi. Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. Hopefully it's working over on Facebook. I don't know. We'll find out. Okay, so anybody with questions, feel free to type those questions in, and I will get those questions on screen for Brian. So I'm sure everyone has heard, probably knows all about the Chauvin trial, the Chauvin trial.
Yeah. So. And then we're receiving Brianna CC just mentioned, and she's corrected, another juror spoke out to the media, and it's on YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's correct. I believe he was one of the jurors who actually deliberated, and they spoke about how that deliberation went down. And that he said they only deliberated for 4 hours. The main thing was just getting over some of the terminology. So it was an interesting interview.
And I'm going to post this up. This is our moderator. She's telling us how we're going to go ahead and do the questions so everybody can see that. Thank you, Moderator Stark.
Yeah. I see a question from Maria Davis. When is a sentence hearing?
So there's a delay for me on this thing. I can already tell. So that's why you're seeing them first.
All right.
Oh, good Lord. So let's see. Yeah, it's very slow. You may have to read them off the screen, Brian.
That's no problem. Maria Davis, that's a great question. So what we were told by Judge Cahill is that sentencing would actually happen 8 weeks from the day of his guilty verdict. But the way they're staggering it is 6 weeks after that, you get what's called like a pre-sentencing report. Basically just gives a person's background. It's what helps them with those ranges. If you forget, the presumptive range for Derek Chauvin is 150 months. The range goes from about 10.6 years to about 15. 150 months is about 12 and a half years. But because of those aggravating circumstances, the judge may be able to go higher than that. And people are expecting the prosecution to ask for higher than the presumptive number. So thanks for that question, Maria. Hi, Stark. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. I see Alyssa asking a question. Will the other 3 officers' trial be filmed? I believe so. I think they're going to have the same type of operation, and that's supposed to be, it's in August. I think August 23rd sounds right to me, but I think it's near the end of August. So thank you for that question, Alyssa.
I have a great question that came in from June Askew, one of our longtime chatters. How much time do you think Shogun will get?
I think, so this is the way that it's working out in my mind, right? So the range is about 12 and a half years. Now, Muhammad Noor, the officer who was convicted of murder in the 3rd degree, when it comes to sentencing, unintentional murder and murder in the 3rd degree is actually in the same range. But I think the judge is going to look at what Muhammad Noor did and what Derek Chauvin did and kind of use it as a benchmark, and he's going to go higher than that. I think Chauvin's going to get somewhere around 30 to 40 years. I don't think that Cahill will top him off at the 40-year. I would say anywhere from, I would say average of 30, so like 25 to 35 years is what I would guess. Thanks for the question, June.
I'm also
Brady, it's my pleasure to be here.
Sorry about that. I'm going to post this comment from Brianna CC, another one of our longtime chatters. She says, I wouldn't convict all 3 of them. What's your thought on that?
I actually agree to some extent, but it depends on what you're talking about convicting. Don't forget that officers have a duty of care. The one that's really confusing to me from a trial strategy standpoint is former Officer Tu Tao. I think that his lawyer should be working overtime right now. I'm surprised that he didn't flip and testify against Derek Chauvin, just to be like, hey, I didn't see what was going on. I was doing crowd control, whatever that may be. Officer King, I think, is in the worst position because they actually brought up his name in Derek Chauvin's trial and said that you can convict Derek Chauvin not only being the principal, meaning the person who actually committed the act, but also the person acting in concert. But they only use King's name when it came to acting in concert. So I think in order of like who's maybe sweating the most would probably be King, Lane, and then Tutao.
Okay, we have another question from another one of our longtime chatters. Toby Walker asks, what could Nelson have done differently?
So to answer your question, a number of defense attorneys and I have been kind of doing this. We're a bit like trial nerds. And so we kind of take ourselves out of, do we think this person is guilty or innocent? And then how do we attack this case? I think Toby Walker, I see you all the time. Toby Walker, first of all, thank you for showing up all the time. I love your comments. I love seeing your name. Let's start from there. Toby, thank you for the question. Sometimes I won't even lie. Sometimes the questions I see you read on YouTube helps me develop questions for Law and Crime Daily. So Toby, big fan of yours. To answer your question, I think Nelson should have come out and flatly said that Chauvin did something wrong, but not criminal. Say that the video looks bad, but that upon greater reflection on the medical testimony, it does seem a little murky, it does seem a little confusing, and that's where reasonable doubt lives. I think he should have embraced that there were bad parts of his case, accept that, and then look at fine details instead of being like, oh, it's carbon monoxide, oh, it could be this, it's not on his neck, it's on his back. He started to lose credibility left, right, and center when he came up with those different arguments. I think he could have been laser focused on cause of death. And even leave use of force. Yeah, he didn't follow his procedures. And you could have eliminated like 7 witnesses that would have been bad for you. And just say, hey, I'm just talking cause of death. This guy went rogue, but he didn't kill him. I think that would have been a smarter argument.
Okay, and I would like to post a comment from one of our moderators. Says, thank you, Brian, Buckmire, and Addi. Great team right there. Oh.
Thank you very much, LL. Trying to see.
Let's see.
IB Alpha said, yes, I agree.
And I have another one from Toby Walker. I'm too thrilled by this opportunity. It's hard to think of questions. I love Brian and his access. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Toby.
Question.
Yep.
Sorry. Here we go. Question from David Pelletier. Buckmire, are you still actively trying cases? And what is inside your seat?
David Pelletier is a friend of mine. We actually graduated from law school together. Love David. Always fighting the good fight. Appreciate you, big guy. So he knows that I monogram foolish things in my suits. Yes, I'm still actively trying cases. Right now, we are debating on whether or not things can be virtual or in person. So there's a bit of a pause or moratorium on hearings and trials. And to answer the other question, on the inside, I'm not sure if you can see it. This one says full acquittal. And then on the collar, it says it wasn't me. I'm not sure how clear that is. David Pelletier, thank you for the question, big guy.
Thank you, David. I think I've seen David in our chat. If I remember correctly, the name sounds familiar.
Yeah, and fun fact, we've been following the Eric Boyd trial, and they have the appeal going on. The Attorney General, Catherine, or we call her Kara, Redding, she is also a graduate from WNL. David and I went to school with her, so we're seeing another one of our friends in one of these trials.
That is so neat. See, I have a question from Amanda. If convicted, how much time are King and Lane looking at?
Well, Amanda, I'm hoping that Maple Leaf means you're a Canadian as well. So I'm glad to see the Leaf. If you are, let us know where. If convicted, they're looking at the same charges. When you're charged with acting in concert with someone, acting in concert basically means you encourage or aid or participate in some way, shape, or form with someone else who's committing a crime. You could be just as liable for the same time as them. Usually with sentencing, though, it's a little bit lesser just because people reasonably believe that if Addi and I go and rob a bank together and she's driving and I go in there with a gun, people are like, hey, Brian's worse than Addi, so Brian gets 30 years and maybe Addi only gets 15, but she could still face the same liability. So thank you for that question, Amanda.
And IBL says, I just want to say thank you to Law&Crime for all you do.
Thank you very much, IBF. We appreciate you and people who come out and watch.
Law&Crime is a great team. We have, as I say in chat all the time, we have a great team. Or it's a huge team, and we all work together. And we work together great. It is awesome to see it happen behind the scenes.
And I love you too, David. I see that comment.
Okay,
we'll catch up after
there
this.
You go. Oh, Cheryl G is another one of our longtime chatters. Very long time. She's way back, a long time before Law&Crime.
Actually, let me do a little plug here. David actually works with veterans in the criminal justice system. If you think I, as a public defender, do great things here, David's a. I'm gonna tell you about David Pelletier's cape. He's fighting the good fight, helping our vets and those people who really need it. So David's a hero in my mind and in my eyes any day.
That is awesome. I know I've seen his name before. He has that name. So Hillbilly Vagabond asks, with the other three going to trial together, will they all three be found guilty or innocent together?
So first of all, love the name. Sometimes when you have these cases tried together, it's almost like guilt by association. And it's going to be really hard. I've been preaching this for a long time. I think that they should start pointing the finger at each other, at least to separate their cases, because I think they'd have a much better time at maybe beating some of the charges. I think most of them will go down for manslaughter, but if they're really trying to beat that top count, especially former Officer Tu Tao, I think he should be pointing the fingers at the other two. I think Lane should be saying, hey, I only touched his legs and I let go. King should be saying, hey, it was Chauvin, that guy who got convicted. But if they all do this, we're going to get tried together. We're going to ride together. They may also die together when it comes to the charges. So they legally one could be found innocent, one could be found guilty, but I think it's going to be difficult if they get tried together. And
pointing the finger is also fun for trial watchers. As a trial watcher, we want to see it. It's good for courtroom stuff. So let's see. We have Toby Walker. Toby, you're doing great. I love you. Says, I get the feeling that Lane did his best. Will the rookie status of the officers be helpful in their defense?
I thought so too before I listened to some of the testimony. It almost seems like Minneapolis had like a revamping of their training program where Shogun may not have heard certain critical types of recovery positions and other things of that nature that the newer recruits would have known. So it's almost like they were more experienced in terms of de-escalation because I've been out of law school for 7 years. I'm seeing people come out right off the bat and their research skills are amazing. Like I'm sure a lot of you people maybe work in areas where like people coming fresh out of school, they know how to look up this or do that. I kind of got the sense of that from the trial. I would be a little worried about that as well because they know what they should have done, but I think it could make for a good, maybe not legal argument, but empathetic argument if it's made in the right way, that they were just rookies and they didn't know what to do because of their superior officer being there. And they tried, but he told them no.
I've actually made comments about that with Lane, about how I feel that how his demeanor was, how he was and what he said, his body cam footage is quite telling. And I think that could come in to play in his case to maybe help him a bit and how he was with Floyd and how he treated him in the moment. So.
Yeah, which makes me pull my hair out because if I was Lane's defense attorney, I would have come out before the verdict and said, my client's willing to testify. He did nothing wrong. Like all the stuff that we're thinking about, Toby, I don't know why the lawyer isn't putting that out there because that's basically the only defense you have. Like get the jury pool already like thinking about it before the trial starts.
Okay, so we're going to move to the next question. By Spiegel Electro, are appeals court a possibility for success for Chauvin?
I don't know. So there's two arguments I think that can be made. I practice in New York and no one outside of Minnesota has ever done this spark of life testimony. It's a purely Minnesota thing in any other state in the District of Columbia, that would be prejudicial testimony. I'd be interested to see how the Supreme Court of the United States would handle that issue, because I don't think that they would make that Supreme Court law, because that would really change the laws all over the country. So I think that's an interesting maybe side angle to appeal. I think he's definitely going to appeal potentially the venue issue, but I don't know if any of them would be successful, at least at the state level, just because the testimony and the evidence was so damaging. And from what we're hearing from the jurors, a lot of those outside influences didn't affect at least two of them, one who actually deliberated.
Okay, Biana CC, do you think Chauvin had a winnable trial or lost from jury selection?
My honest to God answer is I think that you had two people, that being the prosecutors, who are not what I call line prosecutors. So they're not in the trenches. They don't fight the fight, as I see a lot of great prosecutors do that keep me up at night when I have to go to trial. And I also think you didn't have the greatest of defense attorneys. I think if you had a better defense attorney, I think the way this would be a winnable trial, quote unquote, is you beat the top count by saying, hey, medical testimony is kind of confused, but he definitely was negligent. He definitely wasn't paying attention. He should have gotten off. But so you beat the top count in that sense. You go down on the lesser two, and then you appeal it, because the Muhammad Noor case and the Derek Chauvin case, if you believe Muhammad Noor is murder in the third degree, then Derek Chauvin's situation is vastly different. And I think you can maybe beat that murder in the third degree on appeal. You go down on the manslaughter and you get 10 years. They probably max you out. By that definition, I would call that a win for the defense. So that was how my thought process was as a defense attorney for that case.
Okay. Stephanie T, was Shogun out on bond throughout the trial, or did he return to prison each day after trial?
So he was out on bond. I think he got out after like 2 or 3 months because there was a crowdfunding that spent money to get him out. And that's why when you saw after the conviction, the prosecution made the motion for him to be for bail to be withdrawn and for him to be remanded, meaning he was out and now he is in, and there's no bond or bail, no amount of money that can get him out pending the sentence 8 weeks after his conviction.
Okay. Carolyn Innes, Brian, love your show. I learn a lot, as we don't get this insight from Dundee, Scotland. How did you feel when he got found guilty? Sorry.
So you got to remember, so it's kind of, for me, it's like twofold. One is like my personal opinion, and then two, as a lawyer, I try, and thank you very much. As a host, I think it's more important for me to give you the facts, and I'm a bit of a legal nerd. And so I kind of get giddy about like, oh, he should have this strategy and that strategy. And I kind of just leave that up to you guys as to whether or not you think personally this person should or should not be found guilty. And so I try my best to separate that. But to answer your question personally, I think that this was justice. I think that this was unintentional murder. I think that when I look at it brick by brick, did he assault him and it wasn't reasonable within his training? And did that lead to his death? And so I thought that this was a step in the direction of, I've seen articles talk about police favoritism that goes beyond the reasonable, where we should trust our police officers. We should trust our doctors. We should trust our engineers. We absolutely should, but that trust shouldn't blind us from what we see on video or what we see in court. And I think that is a good thing, that we are now getting to a place where we said, hey, this was a bad apple. And I think we should all be comfortable in saying we're happy with removing bad apples and promoting those within the ranks that are great officers, because that's the best way to get to a civilized and just and safe society for everyone. So that's kind of how I felt with that.
Okay, kind of going along the lines of that, June asks, why wouldn't Tao not be in more trouble for watching what Chauvin was doing?
So he would be in the same legal amount of trouble, and that's why he's being charged acting in concert. But I do, separate from a legal argument, I think from like a factual, just persuasive argument, I think a jury of 12 people, if you prompted them correctly through voir dire, you'd be able to argue, hey, he more so than Chauvin, Lane, and King really didn't see or know what was going on. I think there's a factual argument that at least 3 or 4 jurors will come back and say, I'm not convicting him of the top count. And I think for these types of cases, you're really looking to beat the top count and maybe argue on appeal the lesser counts. And so I think you could probably get a hung juror on the top count for Tao, and that's why I think he could potentially be in less trouble.
Okay. Spiegel Electro asks, are appeals court a possibility for success for Chauvin?
I think you asked this question already, Spiegel Electro, but I will say I don't think that success is a possibility. I am interested to see if he appeals the spark of life testimony, but I think within the laws of Minnesota, it fit. I don't think a Minnesota state court will overturn it, but I would be interested to see how a federal appellate court would handle that issue.
Okay. Let's see, we have our moderator, Stark. How long does an appeal take?
Those take years. It really depends on the issue. It depends on the motions that are being filed. It depends on whether or not it's in the middle of the pandemic and what state's going on. Look at the Eric Boyd case that we're covering, where we're just hearing the appeals now. In that case, the trial was back in 2007 or 2008 or something along those lines. So these things take a long time. But thank you for the question.
Next question. Oops. How did you feel when he got found guilty from Dundee, Scotland?
Hey, from Dundee, Scotland. So yeah, similarly, I felt positively. I thought that when I looked at the case factually and legally that he was guilty, and I felt positive that other people had saw that as well, because I know that there's a concept for many people that officers working the line of duty, you give them the benefit of the doubt, and that can sometimes overwhelm evidence that we actually see. And so I thought that this was a positive step towards a proper conviction based on the evidence.
Okay. Toby Walker, how can somebody be convicted of 3 murder charges for the same crime?
Yeah, so Toby, this is a weird thing. Minnesota doesn't have what's called a merger doctrine, a merger, like to merge together. And New York has it. New Jersey has it, and those are the main places that I know because I practice and I'm so close to New Jersey. The way I explain it to my clients, at least, if I took, say I took a pen, right, and I stabbed, I'm not going to stab Addi, so Toby, I'm going to stab you for this example. If I stabbed you in the state of New York, Toby, that would be assault in the first degree because I caused serious physical injury with a deadly weapon, assault in the second degree because I caused serious physical injury, and assault in the third degree because I'm assuming also substantial pain. If I was to go to trial and be convicted of it, one action caused 3 charges, and those would merge together for the purpose of sentencing as well as of a conviction, because it doesn't make sense to be also guilty of the lesser included. Minnesota doesn't do that. They don't merge the cases together for that. And so it does kind of create, like, it almost hurts the brain when you think of like not having a merger doctrine. And so they just say 1, 2, 3 guilty, but when they sentence on the top count. It's just a weird thing because they don't have that doctrine that I think a number of states do have, but also a number of states don't.
Okay. Next is Maria Davis. Will we ever hear about Chauvin's previous conduct as a police officer?
So the Department of Justice is doing an investigation into the patterns and practices of the Minneapolis Police Department. And I think that Chauvin is going to be the way they point to a broader pattern and practice if there is in fact one there. And so I think we may hear him used as an example to try to get after the police department as a whole.
Okay, next is Tag. Do you think this case could be overturned after the jury spoke out?
From what I heard of the juror, and I'm not sure if Good Morning America use snippets that are not used in other areas, but from what I heard, I don't think so. With the juror, don't forget, Tag, that they've got to be unbiased before they see the case. They've got to be unbiased during the case. But once they get a verdict, by definition, they're not unbiased anymore. They either think he's guilty or they think he's not guilty. And so those of all people are able to come up and say, yeah, I think he did it. I think he absolutely did it. And it would make sense considering their vote. If they say something like, we already knew he was guilty from day one and we didn't even wait, like if they say something like that, then I think there's a potential for an appellate issue that could be overturned. But so far, what I've heard from this one juror is that his opinion after seeing everything and his sympathy for the Floyd family after seeing everything. But thank you for the question.
Hey, Toby Walker again. Toby, you and your questions, you're great. How was Chauvin allowed to build up such a career?
And that's what the DOJ is going to look into. What I've been telling people is yeah, Chauvin's actions were horrible. And Eric Nelson kind of touched on it a little, which I thought was weird, where he's like, a reasonable officer wouldn't do this in broad daylight with a camera on their chest, with cameras facing them. And I'm like, yeah, but he did it. And I honestly think, even though he didn't testify, I think Derek Chauvin didn't think he was doing anything wrong. And if the rest of us are looking at him and saying he's doing something wrong, I don't think that is created in a vacuum. I think he's probably done that or seen other people do that around him, and it's not a problem. This is a one time, though, that someone died because of those actions, and it was videotaped in so many ways, and there was such a blowback from media, from social movements, that I think he's like, wow, like even you look at his face when he got convicted, I think he was somewhat surprised that he got convicted of the top count. That's why he wrote his attorney's name on his hand. Usually when you see that, it's because the attorney didn't really prepare or think that they were going to go down on a top charge and might be able to come back for sentencing. So I think no one was monitoring him, and that's what the DOJ is looking into.
Okay, so we have Catherine Mooney. Does anyone know how Shogun is doing in prison?
Well, I think Catherine Mooney said earlier, hello from Montreal. So hello, my Quebecois friend. I'm a Torontonian, as some of you may know. Do I know how he's doing in prison right now? No, from the reports I've seen, he's been in separated custody, so he's not in the general population, and that's probably the wisest thing, especially in a state court where he worked as an officer.
Okay, we're starting to wind down a little bit. We have one of our soon-to-be last questions. This is Dan. The thoughts on decision to not testify, Chauvin's decision not to testify.
I think it was smart for the case that Eric Nelson presented, because Eric Nelson never made him look sympathetic, never made him to be anything than this figure in the background. Even in his summation, when he was talking about a reasonable officer and a reasonable officer, it almost made it look like he was talking about a separate person from Derek Chauvin. I think if he presented a better defense for his client and gave a reasonable explanation through some of the cross-examination of other witnesses, I think that would have created a better opportunity for Chauvin to testify, and then maybe it would have been a smart reason for him to do so. But with the case that his lawyer put out, no, he should have never testified. I think that was a smart move.
Okay, where'd it go? There it is. So, Brian, did you think the verdict was too quick by creepy hauntings?
I was slightly surprised, actually, but when I'm listening to Good Morning America, when we were talking, when the juror was talking about how it broke down, I don't think there was much of a defense here, and I think the jury saw that as well. I think that Barry Brode was a horrible witness. I maybe would have abandoned the this is not a proper use of force argument, or this is a proper use of force argument, and focused directly on the cause of death. I think Barry Brode harmed Nelson's credibility based on just some of the ridiculous things he was saying, like putting someone in a prone position isn't use of force because they're not in pain. Like, my mind blew up when I heard that. I was like, no. And I think the jury did the same thing, where they just, like, when they heard Nelson come up after his case, they're just like, no, not listening to you. We're going to listen to Donna Williams, son, as well as Dr. Tobin, who everyone loved. And I think they made their decision based on those two in the video.
Okay, just a hi from Houston, Texas, from Michael Tijerina.
Oh, absolutely. The verdict is going to have a bearing on his accomplices. If he was acquitted, it'd be very hard to convict someone of acting in concert with someone who's acquitted. I think that those three officers would have been in a great position, and I think they were rolling the dice and lost when Chauvin was convicted, because now you can act in concert with someone who's convicted. And I think King, especially when his name was spoken out about being an accomplice to Derek Chauvin because of where he was in relation to George Floyd being on his back for some period of time, I think King can definitely is worried about this verdict. Lane and Tutal maybe a little bit less so, but still worried nonetheless. Okay,
well, I want to thank everyone. It is time for Brian to head out to his next gig. So yeah. We want to thank all of you guys for pitching in and giving us great questions. Thank you so much. Brian, you have a good day. And we're going to say bye to everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming. Have a good one.